Tom Cavanagh stars in Corrective Measures, out today on Tubi. There's a lot of fans of the graphic novel. Tell us a little bit about the story.
Well, like you say, it's based on a graphic novel. The name is the same. It's Corrective Measures. What I love about this thing is it combines two genres: the prison break movie with the superhero movie. And so we've mashed that. We made this mashup ourselves, and I think it's visceral and exciting. And like you said, free on Tubi. So what's not to like?
What's not to like about that part? Let's talk a little bit about the character of Gordon Tweedy, aka the Conductor. Tell us a little bit about playing him and some of your superpowers in that.
He's a long-suffering inmate at Santib, which is a supermax prison that we find ourselves in. And, you know, the guy's tried to toe the line. In some ways, he's kind of the moral center of the prison. He helps some of the newer incarcerees, you know, explains to them what some of the pitfalls and potential dangers of the prison are. But at a certain point, you know, he's had enough. And the fact that he can conduct electricity and blow things up is never, that temptation is never too far away. And so, you know, he starts going down the old dark path, which is always a good thing for a prison break movie.
When you have the villains and the super villains, you know, you always hear their backstory, but it's always, you know, something in their past that kind of made that twist. But it's also the voice. There's also that voice that, you know, something is going to be happening with this character. Tell us a little bit about creating the perfect voice for this character, and, you know, maybe some of the techniques you've used in the past.
Well, a lot of it is how you want. It's a funny thing. Like, so in this movie, I don't know if we've mentioned it yet, but Bruce Willis is in this movie, and Bruce Willis has had this ability throughout his career to command the screen while doing very little and not actually using the voice. I remember the scene in Moonlighting where at the end of Moonlighting, one of the shows, you know, he gives his jacket to a homeless person that needs warmth, just gives a nod, walks off down into as the night falls. And I remember thinking, look what he just did in like 40 seconds. He commanded the screen, he told the story, and he didn't even speak, you know? And so part of it is what you want to do with, you know, your elocution is like you want to be able to command the screen. And so part of, you'll see that in, for Gordon, the Conductor Tweedy, there's moments where he lets the spark and the sizzle do all the talking. And then he adds on with the voice. And so it's not accidental. It was planned that way. And the fact that he has that superpower to conduct electricity is, you know, for any actor, they're going to tell you like, oh, you get to do that as well. That's a privilege.
Well, you know, one of the reasons I also mentioned that the story about the voice, that I had heard you do the Alan Rickman voice from Die Hard, and I was curious if you had done that for Bruce Willis when you guys were working together.
You know, I try to not get outed that way. I can't remember if I did. I do remember one time doing a show with Christopher Lloyd, and I do a Christopher Lloyd impersonation, and the crew, the guys and the gals and the grips and the electrics were like, hey, Chris, Tom does you. And it was just awful. He's like, oh, well, let me hear you do it then, you know? And so I had to do my Christopher Lloyd impersonation for Christopher Lloyd. And that was supremely embarrassing. Although he was like, you did a pretty good job, you know? And so, you know, you kind of want to avoid doing it for the person that you're doing as best you can.
Number one, this was the highlight of my day. That last 30 seconds is just going to be the highlight and take me through the whole weekend. FYI, I just want you to know that.
I'm glad to hear that. Happy to please.
As far as Bruce Willis goes, made the recent announcement this is one of his last final films before retiring from films. Did you know that going into this process, or was there something that you want to take away from your time with Bruce as far as what he was to you as an actor?
No, I don't know that. I don't know that any of us knew. And I think anytime you get to, you like I said, that Moonlighting thing, and the fact that, you know, I remember watching as a young actor, watching him in Die Hard, and probably not being as erudite or being able to explain it as well as I can now. I definitely understood that what he was doing was the way to go. And now that I've, you know, done it for a while, what he was doing was he wasn't playing the ending of the movie. He was playing, and he wasn't playing the obstacle. It's something I now write on all my scripts. He was playing the overcoming of the obstacle. And so he didn't know that he was going to succeed. Some of the mistakes that you make on the big screen, I see sometimes, like the superheroes know they're superheroes and they know the ending of the movie and they know they will succeed. Whereas the better story is they don't know. And Bruce in that movie is an ordinary person doing extraordinary things, scared, vulnerable, and doing them nonetheless. And the audience can relate to that because like, yeah, I'd be terrified as well. And we take, we take courage from the fact that he has the courage to try and go forth anyway. And so, sharing a screen with someone who taught you lessons like that, these are some of the most important lessons an actor can learn, which is like, don't know the ending, give yourself some place to go. And the fact that, I'm sharing a movie with a guy who helped impart those lessons is like, that was a real boon.
And especially, you mentioned the moonlighting thing from the mid 1980s to something like that, to be able to use that lesson now is just, almost probably a full circle moment for you.
It's great.
Let's talk a little bit about The Flash. Let's talk a little bit about corrective measures, because, as I get older, you think about the things that you ask your parents, can you take me to the comic book store to buy this? And then let's watch this movie together. Or I was a little boy when I'd like to watch The Flash, and I had the Flash action figures to see families gathering together. Talk a little bit about being part of the Flash, and especially that family connection, especially, the past couple of years, we've been at home more, we've been connecting our things through our childhood, and what it means for you to be a part of something that means so much to so many families.
One of the nice things about The Flash, I think, is that, unlike many shows that appeal to adults, it's also a show that appeals to the younger sect as well. It's a show. I've heard this many times, and it sounds corny to say, but it's really true. It's very gratifying to be part of a show that families watch together. I don't know how many times over the last 6 years I've heard we sit down and we watch this show. We watch it together. Like Mike, or you hear my 14-year-old watched the show religiously, and then I started watching because I wanted to watch something with him, and now I'm hooked too. And that opportunity is, strangely enough, is quite rare. It's very hard to say, oh, this is a show that families watch. That, I sort of grew up on some shows like that, but that's a rarity in today's world. And as an actor, I'm loath to, even though I'm talking about myself now, I don't like doing it. But what I do find, I would never, for example, talk about hey, did you see me play JD's brother on Scrubs? That's not something I would do. But for the 11 to 14-year-old demographic, it's the first time in my career where I've been able to talk about it without feeling like I'm an awful human being, because they get right into it. They say, hey, when you blew up Central City, and then you sped back to the lair, how come they didn't see you? And you're like, well, that happened because I can vibrate at super speed and nobody can kind of see me. They're like, oh, that's really cool. Do you think Blue Flash is going to happen in this next one? They're so into it, and they're guileless, and they love talking about it. And that's one of the, I would say probably one of the best things about doing The Flash is connecting with a younger audience and making them see that hey, we're all regular and normal and humans just doing this stuff. And it sort of demystifies that process, I think, a little bit. I think it's a gift for us, and I think a gift for them.
Oh, exactly. It is. And obviously, you remember those storylines, and obviously other characters or other actors on the show have probably an easier time because you play 21 different characters. So there's a lot of storylines you have to remember for all the fans. And go ahead and catch Corrective Measures streaming now on Tubi. And this Christopher Lloyd impersonation, that highlighted my day. I just want to remind you that just made my day.
88 miles an hour. You're welcome.
Stream it on Tubi. Tom, thank you so much for your time today.